Welcome, everyone. This is Melissa Snow, and welcome to my podcast. I'm going to be telling some spooky stories, true spooky stories, and the first one I'm just going to jump into, and I read it already, so I can just tell you what it is. So there was a lady, and she's Native American, and she had two kids, two daughters, and she named one of her kid I think it's Chula, and it means fox. And every time her daughter was like, "Oh, I love foxes. I see a fox there, I see there," or she'll call and be like, "I saw this fox." So the lady, she ends up washing the dishes, and she can see out in the woods. And all of a sudden, a fox comes, and she stops what she's doing and just looks at the fox, and they're both staring at each other for 5 minutes. And so she's like, "Wow, I just saw a fox. This is really cool. I'm going to call my daughter." So she calls her daughter, and her daughter didn't pick up. Right before that happened, I guess, a drunk driver hit her daughter, and she passed away. And then all of a sudden, that fox came to the woods, and her mom saw it. And ever since then, her mom was looking for this fox, and she hasn't seen it since. So I really think that was her daughter coming to tell her she was okay. And it's really sad. And please don't drink and drive. You hurt everybody else and yourself in this situation. If you're drinking, it's just like pulling a trigger. You went into a car under the influence. But anyway, please don't drink and drive. Just think about what you're doing. Don't be under the influence. On to my next story. All right, and let's go to the next story. So the next story is about a guy. He's a juvenile detention officer in Miami in the early 70s. So he was in the prison, and he was a guard. So there was a guy there that reminded him of Hannibal Lecter. So when he was outside the room, and the other guards were outside the room, and there was a couple people that got called out. So this guy, he decides to start rallying up everyone and making them have a big fuss and screaming and yelling. So he's making everyone go crazy. I don't know what he said to them because it doesn't say in the story. But soon as they decided to go in there, this guy, the Hannibal Lecter, he was very persuasive, he said. And he could get anyone to do anything. He was a small guy. He wasn't big. So just by his words, he can talk people into anything. And so the dad goes in and goes up to the guy and tries to calm everybody down with the inmates and the other guard. And the Hannibal Lecter guy, was just standing in the middle of his cell, not even yelling and screaming like everyone else, which is kind of creepy. And he was just reciting the guy's dad's phone number over and over again. And he said he never got a call. He doesn't know how they got it. They think someone might have bribed it, or he saw on a piece of paper. But he was just saying over and over again his phone number, which is kind of creepy. But his dad was really impressed by it. And the son said this is his dad's story, and that's about it. That's that story. And on to the next story, and here we go. So this next story is about a guy that had a cell phone, and at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. every night, he would get a phone call with a hellish sound noise like static mixing with screams. And he change his cell phone number again, and that kept happening. So he ended up calling the number back, and it was some old guy. Didn't know what he was talking about. And then he decided to get another phone with a new number at the same company, and it kept happening again at 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. So he decided to switch carriers, and it kept happening with that carrier. And then he would call back, and one time he called back, and it didn't go through. It was disconnected. So then he ended up losing his job and losing his phone, and he did not have a phone anymore. So one day he was hanging out at his mom's house, and his brother was there, and his mom came up to the brother and said, "Hey, listen to this phone call I just got." So she said, "Why?" The brother was like, "Why does it sound like that?" So it was someone screaming and static, and the same thing that was happening to his phone when he had a phone. Remind you that he doesn't have a phone anymore because he lost his job and he couldn't pay for it anymore. So the brother went and told the guy that this happened, and then his brother just started freaking out. Yeah, I'd freak out too. And they dialed the phone number this last time, and when they did that, the number said it was disconnected. That's creepy. On to the next story. So in this next picture, this girl is a babysitter, and she's never been in this house before, and she said that they had weird masks. It was kind of dirty and disorganized, and she was kind of weirded out because of it. But other than that, she was there to babysit 3 kids while the parents went home. And this house is unfamiliar to her because around 10 o'clock, the power goes out. And since the TV wasn't an option anymore, they had nothing to do, and she was trying to figure out what they should do next. So the oldest girl, her name is Julian, started going through her purse. And she took out the camera that was in her purse and started snapping pictures. Then later on, okay, remember, the power went out, it's pitch dark in there, and they had nothing to do but figure out what to do next. So later on, the parents come home, like I said, and then the next morning she wakes up and she's like, "Oh yeah, I forgot the kid took pictures." So in every picture she was looking at, there was a man standing in the window, looking in the window in every picture. Oh my God, when I read that, I freaked out. I was like, oh no, 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 no. I don't even know what I would do. I'd never go back there. Like, why? So there's that story, and on to the next. All right, and the next story is, there's a guy and this girl, and they're sleeping, and here's not a sister, his girlfriend. They're boyfriend and girlfriend, and he hears her say, "What are you doing?" And then she sometimes talks in her sleep. And then he said that he woke up, and he said, "What are you doing?" And but she sounded so coherent and urgent, and she jolted me and woke me up, and she was talking about it. And she said, "I woke up because I thought there was somebody at the end of the bed. And I asked what they were doing." And then he's like, "What? Why are you saying that?" Because he thought she was just talking in her sleep, and she was halfway asleep and thought she was going crazy because she thought she saw somebody. So they go back to bed, and then he starts sleeping again, and then he has a dream that he sees someone at the end of the bed doing the same exact thing that she said. And then, but they were in a white sheet wrapped around their neck. And then he said the only thing he could say was, "What are you doing?" Then his girlfriend woke up and they started freaking out. That's kind of a weird story, but yeah, there you go with that one. On to the next. So, in this next story, this guy, when he was younger, his mom would always rock him in a hammock. And she was sleeping on the, laying on the floor, and she was tired too. And the only way he can fall asleep was rocking in the hammock. So one night, she was on the floor, and she was rocking it. And then he was in the hammock. And she ended up falling asleep and had a dream that her sister came and said, "Hey, you need to go to sleep. Let me take over. You're tired. Let me do it." And her sister was dead, for a long time. So the mom, right when she said that, woke up and she looked over at the hammock and saw it rocking by itself, because there's no way it was doing that. So ever since that day, his mom has dreamt about her deceased sister, and her sister tells her things all the time. Yeah, that would scare me, because dreams are crazy. You don't know what you're gonna have. I've been having weird dreams. All right, so on to the next. This next story was this little kid was at his aunt's house, and he needed to go to the bathroom. And so he was walking out, and he saw his cousin sitting on the stairs. And so he sees her doing weird things. And he walks up to her and asks, "Hey," and her name is April, "what are you doing, April?" She said, "I'm making funny faces at the girl with the braids in her hair." And he looked around. He's like, "There's nobody around here." She's like, "I'm just copying the lady with the braids." And I looked around and it was no one but us. When I asked where the lady was, she said she was on top of the stairs. She pointed to the beam and then told the lady it was by the stairwell. So the kid started going to the bathroom and walking up the stairs, and she turns around and she stops in her tracks, dead stops in her tracks. And she's like, "Don't go up that way. The lady with the beam on the beam is hanging by her hair. And she's making funny faces." So it scared the girl, and she was like, "What?" So the lady was unalive, and she thought she had braids in her hair. And she just didn't know what to think of that. And she said the funny faces was the lady gasping for air. That was a crazy story. But yeah. On to the next story. I just read what somebody said on there. It was kind of creepy. But let's go to the next story. In this next story, this guy, when he was a kid, he had a massive dresser. It was antique. And then he said all of a sudden this guy would come out of the dresser and start talking to him and telling him crazy stories and just telling him stuff that he couldn't remember, but he remembered he was there. And then his dad traveled a lot, and then his dad asked him what he was up to lately. So he told his dad what happened. And his dad got really pale, and then his brother and him took the dresser outside and burned it. Because when he was younger, he saw this guy, and his name is Peter or Patrick, they said. And when they burned the antique dresser, he started having terrors. And he couldn't sleep anymore. So they moved him out of the room where he was at, and then doesn't say anything else after that. But I guess that everything went back to normal. And so there was a ghost in this antique dresser. And the kid remembered, and his dad started freaking out. So yeah, that was that story. All right, on to the next story. So the next story is about this kid, and he was at school, and they were taking a tour and a field trip to a Louisiana plantation. And this place is known to be really haunted, and they were taking the tour and going around in a large group, and the guide was talking about what was going on in the whole entire place. And all of a sudden he hears this sound like ding ding ding, like a piano playing. And then he looked over at his friend and he said, "Do you hear that?" And his friend's like, "No, I don't hear anything." And then it happened again, louder. His friend heard it, but then he's like, "No, I don't hear it." So he's looking all around the room because he's still hearing this noise. And he sees a lady pointing to her ear, like, "Do you hear that too?" And then he nods, and they look around. And then later realizing that when the guy was talking, the tour guide, he was talking about a soldier that was playing the piano. And he plays the keys, and people have heard it all through that whole day. And then when he went by the lady said, "Yeah, I heard it too, and I saw you, but my family didn't hear it at all. And I thought I was going crazy, and I didn't know what to think." And then this kid said to this day he doesn't know what to think because the story is crazy, and he knew he heard and saw a ghost or something. And excuse me. And then after that, he realized that no one else heard it because they would have said anything. So that's that story for you right there. And on to the next one. This is going to be hopefully a good one. So this next story is about this guy having a reoccurring dream. And in his dream, someone is trying to hurt him, and there's nothing he can do to stop him, but every time he wakes up, he sees something in the corner. And every time he goes to sleep, he wakes up and the thing's closer and closer to his bed. Then when he goes to sleep, and then he sees it at the foot of his bed when he wakes up, because he's in a panic, so he can't get up and turn on the lights and everything because he's freaking out. So every time he had this dream, he would wake up with a struggle, and he was screaming and crying and yelling and freaking out. So one day he decides to get a dog, and then he had his dog on his bed, and like his own bed down on the floor. And then he started having this dream again. So the dog got up and started sitting next to his feet and then helping the guy wake up, and then he didn't see anything anymore. And it says, "This is the type of story, I know this is not the type of story that you were looking for about a nightmare. It makes me really uneasy." Yeah, of course it's going to make anyone uneasy. So those are my stories for today, and I hope everyone has good dreams tonight, not like scary, spooky dreams. And pretty soon we're going into the spooky season, so I'm going to have to find some scarier stories to tell. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll have to see you guys next time. I am Melissa Snow, and peace out, everyone. Talk to you later. Bye.